Hey guys, thanks for tuning into CMTEQ channel in this C++ programming snippet, where we basically going to look at the easiest way to pass an array as a function argument. And to make the illustration easy, we basically going to try to analyze the CAN bus data. So as you can see here, we've got data coming out of a CAN bus, which is basically an array of bytes. And so to analyze this CAN bus data, we basically going to write a function that will take this array as a function argument and try to decode it and to come up with meaningful values so that we can make sense of it. So as an example, we are going to assume that the values that we're going to get from the CAN bus will be battery voltage, engine temperature, oil level, and brake fluid level. Now, from those of you who are not sure what a CAN bus is, it's basically a communication protocol that is really widely implemented, especially in the motor vehicle industry, where they have the vehicle control unit communicating with various aspects of your car. So that will be telling you your engine temperature, oil level, and all other sensors, cameras, and whatever system that is ensuring that your vehicle operates properly. So without any further ado, we're going to create a main function here. So I'm going to create a C++ main file, cpp, enter. Okay, so we've got our file here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to split this window here. So let's split it right. Okay, so then we can just close there. So we've got our notes here. Now we can start writing our code in this section. So to start off, we're going to call the header file for our C++ program. So that will be include iostream. Okay, and we also going to make use of the namespace for the standard input output. That will be using namespace, okay, std, like that. Then we're gonna come way down here where we're going to basically create our main function, which is always of type what, integer, because the function will have to return something. So we're gonna return 0 to assume that the function was executed successfully. The main purpose is, like I said earlier, we're going to pass an integer array of byte into a function to process it. Okay, so now we assume that we are dealing with CAN bus data here, and we've got some form of a library that's already helping us to get the data from the CAN bus. Okay, now we just want to work with the data. So we're going to just hard code the data that we've got here. Okay, so I'm just going to say hard code array of byte. Okay, like that. And then to create my array of byte of my CAN bus, I'm gonna give it a data type of type integer, and then I'm gonna give it a name, CAN data. Okay, now because we already know what the size of our CAN bus here, since we already got it from our extractor, so we're just going to include the size for our array here, and then we're going to pass all the values into our array. Okay, so I'm just go ahead and copy this data, okay, and then pass them here. Now I have to get rid of this 0x because we are hard coding it as a string of decimal values of type integers. Okay, then we're going to process them, but we know that the CAN bus is sending them as bytes. So that is what we have to process. Okay, so now I've got my array of bytes here of size 10. But now remember, if you do not want to hard code your array of byte like this, you want to rather ask the user to enter the array of data, you can also ask it, but then you have to call cout to basically request the user to enter data. Okay, now as you request the user to enter data, then you have to also call for cin to basically handle the data. Now in this case, you must make sure that you initialize the array, okay, without data like this. So basically what you can do here is, let's say we comment out this array of data. You want the user to enter data, you can initialize an array of data as int num, right, like that, and then basically pass the size. Here you can say size is 5, okay, and then from here you then need to give the placeholder where each data the user is going to pass into specific placeholders. So you can have something like this, 0, okay, so that will be for the variable, the first one that the user is going to enter. Then you can go ahead, num1, that will be for the second variable that the user is going to enter, and so on. So that basically will store all the data entered by the user into this array here. But that's not the road that we are taking here. We want to simplify things, so we already had code the array of variable here. So now we can go ahead and process our data. So to process our data, we're basically going to create a function. We're going to call this function decode can data. Okay, so this function is going to decode our can data, but then the function need to be passed some variable. So the first variable we're going to pass is, obviously we're going to pass the can data here, okay, into the function. So we're gonna say can data, and then we're also going to pass the size, right, the size of the array. But since we do not have the size of the array yet, okay, then we have to go ahead and find the size. Otherwise we can just hard code and pass the size 10 here, okay. But since we do not want to do that, we need to rather determine the size. So now let's say you were just getting data coming from the can bus and you will not know what the size is. So you basically have to get that array variable and get the size out of it. So in order to get the size of our array, we're going to divide the size of the array by the size of the first variable in the array. So we're going to call size of, okay, and then we're going to pass can data in there, and then we're going to divide it by the size of the first variable in the array, okay. So then we're just going to say size of, then the first variable in the array, since we do not know, because right now we have this, but normally we wouldn't have this, okay. Then we're just going to take our can data array that we did define, okay. Then we're just going to say, well, can data with the placeholder 0, so that basically will mean the first variable there, and we are dividing, and we're going to get the size. The value that we get, we then pass it into this function. So now we can go ahead and basically create this function so that this error can go away. So we're going to create a function also of type integer. So we say decode, right, can data. Okay, so now we've got our function, okay, and the error should basically go away. So now this function here is taking argument, okay, it takes argument. So we need to place the argument for our function. So since we don't know, okay, we don't know what will be passing here, but we are just saying this function we're creating is a function that can accept array. So we can basically just give it any name. So we're going to say my array, okay, and we just place the empty bracket. So that will just signify that the function indeed is going to be accepting an argument of array type, okay. And then the next thing is we're just going to also include the size. Now remember, these names here, they don't have to be exactly the same as this. So you can put an S there, it doesn't matter, except that the value that we're expecting here, as you pass it from here, must be the size of this array. That's what we're expecting. Otherwise, if you just take the array, you don't take the size, so you obviously will have to do this right inside this function here so you can get the size. But if this is already done here on your main function, then you just expect the size to basically be included on your request there. So now you know that your function here is receiving an array as one of the argument. So now the function need to now go to work and process the array that's being input as argument here. Let's say you want to get the sum of all these variables inside your array. So all you have to do here is basically to initialize a variable sum and give it a value of 0 as an initialization, and then you're going to call your for loop. Okay, so you call a for loop, and inside your for loop you're basically going to circle into your array and then add all the data together. So you're going to say int I is equal to 0, I is less than what is less than the size of your array that's given to you, and then you're going to increment I. Now inside your for loop here, okay, inside your for loop, basically all you have to do is to take all the data and add it together into the variable sum. Okay, so we're going to say my array, okay, and then we're going to pass I here. So this is a very simple code. So basically every time we're incrementing a variable I, starting from 0, we're taking that, we're adding it to sum, and all the way until we exhaust the value of size here, which is equal to 10 as we know, then that will process all these variables here, and it's going to basically give a whole value for sum here. And if you want to print it out, you can just go ahead and say cout. You can say array sum is equal to, so basically you now need to pass your variable sum, and you can end it right there. And let's go ahead and give this a run here so that we can just see that so far the function is working and there is no error here. Okay, there we go. So the array sum is 807, and we've got a warning here. So the function, no return statement. Yeah, obviously the function here need to return 0 because this function here is basically of type integer. But now we're not going to return 0 here. We're going to return the values after we're done processing them. For instance, here you can basically also return sum. Okay, you can return sum, and then you have to catch it here. So if you catch it here, you can basically create another variable, int return, okay, like that. So now from here, you basically can copy this statement here, okay? You can just copy that statement, okay? And paste it here, okay? And then here, instead of sum, you can just put return, okay? You basically going to get the same thing. You basically going to get the same thing. Now, to avoid redundancy here, let's just go ahead and comment out that. And then we can just run this again. So let's just see here. There we go. We're getting exactly the same thing. Now this time around, it's not being printed into our decode can data. It's basically being printed on our main function because we're getting the result from this function. Okay. Now let's go back to the other topic of this tutorial, that is to actually try to decode or process the CAN bus data here. Now we've got the data here. Now let's assume that as we know, so the first byte here is an ID, okay, and then the second byte here is basically the DLC, which is the data length, okay, that will tell us what it is. So number 8 here will signify that these are all 8 bits, okay, these bytes are all 8 bits. So what we're going to do now here is, if we have access to the CAN bus documentation, so we've got information, then we will basically know that let's say these two values here, they will signify the voltage of information, okay, and these next two here will signify the engine temperature, and these will signify the oil level, and these will signify also the breakthrough level, and they will all have information in that documentation. What are the units? Okay, so we know that the voltage will be in volt, and you have to get a unit, how to measure multiply it, and your temperature will basically be in degree. Now, in order to properly process this data, we will have to find out which one is a higher byte and which one is a lower byte. Now, let's say that these 1 here and 0, 0, 0, they are lower bytes. So that basically means if they are lower bytes, then we will have to then left shift them, because this is 8 bits. Okay, so we have to shift them 8 times and then add it to the higher byte so that we can get the voltage or the temperature or whatever oil level value that we need. So in order to implement that, we can just go ahead here. We're going to basically declare variable as we go. So I'm going to say int. So I'm declaring a variable of type integer, and I'm calling this volt. Okay, so I'm calling it volt, and then I'm taking my array. Okay, so I'm taking my array, and I know that my array position 0, 1, 2 here. Position 0, 1, 2 is basically the higher byte for the voltage. So I'm going to place a value of 2 there. Okay, and then I'm going to add it, okay, with my array, this time around position 3. And then I'm going to left shift position 3 by 8 so that I can get a decimal value that I can then add into this value here. Okay, and that will then give me the value of the voltage. Then all these need to be added and then multiply, let's say, by 0, 1. So that will give me a value in volt that I can indeed say, okay, this is the voltage level of the battery coming from the vehicle CAN bus. Then I can go ahead and repeat this for all the other data that I have to process. So this, I will just replace it with temperature. So I'm going to say engine temp, and we know that the variable placeholder in the array is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so that will be 4 and 5. Now the temperature, the multiplier will, for instance, be 1. Then the next one will be oil level. So I'm going to just say oil level. Okay, then that will be 6 and 7. Okay, and the multiplier will be 1%. Then the next one is going to be brake fluid level. Brake fluid. Okay, and that is going to be 8 and 9. And the multiplier here is also going to be, let's say, 1%. We can go ahead and print something on the screen. So I'm going to just copy this line. Okay, and then obviously we have to change here. Okay, so that will be volt, and these will be engine temperature. The next one will be oil level, and this one is going to be brake fluid, something like that. Then obviously we have to also pass the parameter here, so that will be volt. This is going to be engine temp, and this is going to be oil level, and this is going to be brake fluid. Okay, so now let's go ahead and give this a run to see if we are still heading in the correct direction here. So we save and we run. Okay, there we go. So we see volt. It says that the battery voltage is 49. The engine temperature will be in degree. It says it's 55 degree. The oil level is 86%. The brake fluid is 69, and we are still computing here because we're still returning the value of sum. Now it seems like we're getting values, okay, from our CAN bus data here. So now let's say we want to return all of these value back into the main function. Okay, because this function here is basically just decoding it for us. Now, if we want to return the value so that we can take action from the main function, then we have to pass all these value here as an array into the main function. But that is going to be a subject for another tutorial. Now, to test something out, we're just going to pass one simple value. So we're going to pass the engine temperature. So we know that the engine temperature is this value here. So I'm going to copy that and I'm going to pass it there as the only value that we are returning from our function. So then this is going to be the engine temperature. So in the return here is the engine temperature. So now what are we going to do if, let's say, here we are getting the engine temperature is like 55 degrees. Okay, so we can pull an if statement here and we can say if, right, returns, which is our engine temperature, if return is greater than 50. Okay, if return is greater than 50, then we can pass an action, which in this case I'm just going to write a message here and I'm going to basically just say in this case here we just want to turn on the radiator fan. Turn on radiator fan. Okay, that's what we're going to do in this situation here. Now let's go ahead and give this another run. Okay, let's see. There we go. So we're getting array sum 55. Okay, that is still printing from this line of code here since we didn't comment that line of code out. But we're getting a message here that says turn on radiator fan. Why are we turning on the radiator fan? Because the temperature, the engine temperature here, okay, which we're getting a return from the decoded kind bus that is returning the engine temperature, is telling us that, well, that value is greater than 50. So we have to turn on the radiator fan. Okay, so if, for instance, it is this 50 here, let's say we change it to a 4. Okay, now we know that it's going to be less, so that will basically mean this is not going to be executed. So if we save this and run this again, we should be able to see that nothing is going to be printed. As you can see, nothing is printed, but we can put an else here to say that everything is fine. Okay, so this is it, guys. So if you find anything useful, please give it a thumbs up. Okay, so in the next tutorial, we're basically going to return an array from this function. So as you can see that all these values here, they can be stored into an array and then return the array back to the function. Okay, and then the main function here must not only handle one variable, but it must handle all the array and do something with them. So that will be the subject for another tutorial. If you found it useful and interesting, please don't forget to subscribe to CMTEQ channel and give this tutorial a thumbs up. That will be highly appreciated. Until next time, cheers.